Hi everyone, it's Tanya Stacey from Cuppa Tea Channel, the place for all those tea lovers and tea addicts to build your tea knowledge. This episode is the first in a number of episodes in a series on tea and food pairing, where I have got some wonderful people from across the world, international and local people, to talk about their tea and food experience. All these people have they specialise in this area. The first person in this series is Anna, the Tea Squirrel. A self-confessed curious mind, she wants to take people into the world of tea and explore it through tea and food. So it's interesting to look at how her journey has been so far. So enough about me, let's get on to her.
Hi Tanya! Thanks for your kind introduction and thanks for having me on your YouTube channel. Hi everyone, I'm Anna, nice to meet you all. So Tanya asked me a few questions and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. The first one is to describe one reason that set me on the path to learn more about tea. I'd say the reasons are mainly two. The first has to be definitely curiosity, and the second, creativity. I've always been a curious person and a keen traveler, and I've always been curious about other countries, other cultures, and I think that tea is the perfect tool to discover another culture, not only the producing cultures or countries in Asia, or in Africa or wherever they might be, but also the cultures that regularly consume tea, like the British culture, for example. And so that has to be like the curiosity to explore, and that has to be one of the main reasons, definitely. The second has to be creativity, as I was saying. And for example, when I started my tea blog, I had to learn photography from zero. And photography has helped me a lot to express the beauty of tea beyond words. I've never thought of myself as a creative person or an artist, and tea helped me discover that with tea photography. I think that tea deserves the same respect as wine for example, in restaurants and in fine dining restaurants. And I see tea sommeliers being much more present in the restaurant industry, in the hospitality industry, beyond afternoon tea, for example. So I see tea and food pairings becoming a really important part of fine dining, because tea has so much potential, and as I was saying, it definitely deserves the same respect as wine. Another question that Tanya asked me is about my approach to pairing tea and food, or to creating recipes with tea. And I would say that my approach has to be very creative, is definitely very creative. So it's clearly different. Pairing is very different than infusing food with tea. But I think in both cases, what plays a huge role is building a sensory memory of aromas, taste, and so on and so forth. Because once you know what aromas and flavors, once you can recognize them and you have them in yourself, you can then pair them. And there are different methods to pair tea with food, by contrasting, by similarities. So you want to have that background of flavors and aroma notes in yourself to be able to tap into that when you want to design a pairing. When infusing tea with food with tea, you have to be mindful of different elements and different variables, of course, because you need in that specific recipe a carrier for the tea flavor, and sometimes that is a liquid, it can also be a fat, it can be a sugar-based syrup, it can be anything really, but you need to make sure that there's something in that recipe that carries the tea flavor, otherwise it gets lost among the different ingredients. In pairing tea and food, I have to say I'm a huge fan, and I think the pairing was very successful. I'm a huge fan of cold brewed teas and oysters on the half shell. Here in California we have beautiful Pacific oysters, some grown here on the California coast. Most of the Pacific oysters come from the Pacific Northwest, so up north, from Seattle, the Seattle area. But I find that the Pacific oysters are easier to pair with tea because they are less briny, so less salty than Atlantic oysters, for example, or French oysters. And I use different teas. I used a silver needle white tea, I used a Tamarillo Kucha Japanese green tea, a Dragon Well, a Longjing from China, and a less sophisticated tea, a gunpowder Temple of Heaven, which is a little bit smoky. And the most important part here was also the temperature. You don't want to wash down your raw oysters with a hot beverage, definitely. And so the cold brewing helped draw out all the subtle flavors from the teas without any astringency, and also temperature-wise pairing perfectly, was going really well with the cold oysters on ice. And I think the pairing works beautifully. It's one of my favorites of all times. Also, a pairing with matcha that I really like is a ceremonially prepared bowl of matcha with Italian uncured ham, prosciutto crudo or di Parma, and black mission figs. So it's a pairing that includes the whole palette of flavors. You have the grassiness, the umami, the sweetness, the saltiness, and I think it's really, really delicious. To me, I was really excited to see Alexis of Teaspoons and Petals pair a beautiful aged roasted oolong with pretzel shortbread cookies. I think that was one of the most creative pairings I've ever seen. And also another pairing that I had in New York City at a tea house at Tech Company was an oolong, again, roasted oolong. I think it was aged in that case as well, with their signature cookies, which are pineapple linzer cookies. So beautiful buttery cookies with a pineapple jam. There's some spiciness from chili, there's lime zest, and there's flaky sea salt. That was really amazing. I think cheese is one of the most difficult things to pair with tea, because I find that sometimes with the most delicate cheeses like mozzarella or ricotta, those are very, very delicate in flavor, and sometimes that flavor tends to get lost in the pairing. I find that in that case it can help if you add a sprinkling of salt on the cheese and maybe a little bit of olive oil. And also on the other end of the spectrum, the more rich and pungent cheeses or blue cheeses are sometimes very overpowering and might overpower the tea. And so I think that tea and cheese pairings can be really amazing, but for me personally, it's more difficult to find a good pairing that I like. I think it's impossible to narrow it down to one single tea. I think I have many favorites and they change with the seasons, with my mood, with the weather, sometimes with the teas that I've recently discovered, they become favorites. But in general, I think I prefer like the greener end of the spectrum. So green teas, greener oolongs, high mountain oolong from Taiwan. Those greener, less oxidized. I prefer Shangpuer over Shupuer. But I will say that sometimes in the winter I'm more drawn to deeply roasted oolongs or those nice golden tip black teas. So as long as the tea is really high quality and displays the craftsmanship of the tea maker, of the tea farmer, I am always happy to try it, and definitely I will enjoy it. This is a difficult one. Here in San Francisco we have amazing options in my opinion, so definitely I couldn't be happier to be here in San Francisco and have all these options available. I really liked Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada, because they also have nice tea. There are many craft cocktail bars that do tea cocktails, and so there's a lot of innovation there and a lot of good tea available. I was in the spring in New York City. I mean, in New York City it's hard. There's something missing there because you have everything available, and also in New York City there's a lot of innovation, a lot of new ideas, new concepts related to tea, and I was very excited. And also Seattle, which played a huge role in my tea journey. I was living in Seattle a while ago, and I think there is where everything began. I got to use a Gaiwan, and I got to explore more authentic teas, and so that really helped me progress into my tea journey from the more mainstream teas and sometimes flavored teas to the more high quality, authentic. You guys can find me definitely on my blog, The Tea Squirrel, at teasquirrel.com. You'll find a contact page if you want to contact me. I'm always happy to chat with fellow tea lovers. I'm on social media as well, especially on Instagram. Or you can find me in San Francisco exploring the new offerings by our local tea houses, exploring new trends. On my blog, very soon I'm researching and trying to gather as much information as possible for a matcha map of San Francisco, which will be divided into a section with ceremonial matcha and a section with matcha latte. I know many people enjoy matcha latte, I do occasionally too. And also where to buy matcha powder. And also in the November issue of Fresh Cup magazine, you can find an article by me on tea cocktails in San Francisco, and that is super exciting. I believe you can find it online as well. And I was able to talk to craft cocktail bartenders here and find out why they use tea, and I hope you guys will read that, and I hope to get in touch with you soon if you want to shoot me an email or comment on my Instagram. And thank you again, Tanya, for hosting me on your channel. I'll see you guys soon. Bye!